Hi, everybody. Pioneering in the field of hydrogen production and solar power while investing in other companies' efforts to achieve a net zero future. This company is revolutionizing the way we think about energy storage and transportation. Let me introduce Greenstat. Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Builder Nation. I'm your host, Sam, and today we are joined by Vegard Frihammer, CEO and founder at Greenstat. Welcome, Vegard. Thank you very much for joining us today. Please introduce
Thank
yourself a
you
little bit.
for having me.
It's our pleasure. Could you please give us a little introduction to who you are, to what you do, what led you here?
Yes, my name is Vegard Frihammer, and as you say, I'm the CEO and also the founder of Greenstat. I was founded back in 2015. Before that, I've got a background from oil and gas and the maritime industry in Norway. But quite early, I figured out that I would like to use my oil and gas background to develop green solutions for the future, and that's why we ended up founding Greenstat. But Greenstat is located in Bergen on the west coast of Norway, but we are developing projects all over the world.
And that's actually pretty cool because I have taken a look at your website. Yes, you are doing it around the whole world. It's amazing. But before we delve into where you're doing it and the type of efforts, can you please give us an overview of what Greenstat does? Like, I know, for example, you already own your projects, you invest in a lot of, external companies. But what exactly is it you do so that we are all on the same page?
Yes, I will try to give you a fairly quick introduction, but we work quite broadly. So for it takes a bit of time to get into a setup, but I will also tell you a little bit about what we not do, so that we do exclude things. But our approach is based on knowledge. Greenstat was founded from Christian Michelsen Research, which is a
Mm-hmm.
research institute in Norway that focus both on the oil and gas and renewable energy sectors. And through the years, we've acquired quite a lot of knowledge on the
Mm-hmm.
various types of renewable energy sources. But we saw that there were no industrial players picking up some of these new areas. So what we wanted to do was to create an industrial company that
Mm-hmm.
could have the same role as we know within the oil and gas, where we have Statoil now
Right.
Equinor in Norway, and also within the hydropower, where we have Statkraft and other utility and power companies. So that was the setup, and we did not want to take any technology risk. So our role should purely be to develop the best project within the most commercially available areas.
Mm-hmm.
So quite early we picked hydrogen for the energy carrier,
All right.
solar and wind to produce the energy that we needed for the hydrogen production, and then we added energy stations along the way. But in all the segments, we are technology neutral. So we buy available technology so that we can build
Mm-hmm.
projects fairly quickly. And then we also invest in companies that sort of can open up markets for any of these areas, both within hydrogen. We look at maritime application solutions, and also in the other segments, but it will always be linked to what we do with the base of our company. So I don't know if that gave any sense to you,
I
but
mean,
obviously we have a broader focus than just purely being a hydrogen company. But that's a setup that we believe is the future of being an energy company.
right, and that is actually sort of the very first question that I have to your tech, related to your tech. So you already mentioned that you sort of started with this hydrogen, and then you verged into energy stations, solar, wind, etc. Right, and then you also invest in other companies with the same efforts. My question to this is, at the very beginning, right? How do you determine which are the go-to energy production systems? Because, for example, you could have version to other areas to invest, maybe in geothermal,
Yep.
maybe in floating solar panels, for example, because Norway, I know, has plenty of lakes and plenty of these places. What led you to decide exclusively for first of all, hydrogen for this transportation, and then wind and solar.
Yeah. Now there are lots of other sort of areas that we could have chosen, like offshore wind, and you've got wave, and you've got tidal, and you've got all sorts of. So we had to choose something. But where we started was that we are looking sort of into the future and looking when we think about 2050. Then we have all decided, even all the politicians have decided that we are going for a zero emission society. And that means that all the fossil fuels that we consume today needs to be converted. So that means that we need many different solutions. And we in Norway now we're seeing that the battery solutions, they're taking quite a bit of, they've sort of revolutionized the private car sector. But there is a huge gap from the 100% zero emission society from where we are today. So what we are using the best of our knowledge, so that, okay, batteries will fill quite a bit. Biofuels will also be a significant part, but you will have some hard to abate sectors that you will not be able to do without hydrogen. So looking at that picture from sort of far into the future, we could start to trace back and see what kind of role could Greenstat play to have a long-term vision in establishing value chains for green hydrogen production, and also choosing green hydrogen. That's also linked to our previous knowledge within oil and gas. So we sort of had a competitive advantage, both as a company and as a nation, choosing that area compared to others. So it's all based on sort of the final solution that we see both in Norway and the world. And then eventually, when you look at hydrogen as an energy carrier, you need a lot of energy, and the obvious choices would be solar and wind, adding the others as you go. So it ended up being a sort of a natural place to start.
Right. Sort of naturally leaned that way. That's actually pretty cool. But now I'm very curious. So, what kind of efforts, when it comes to the actual tech development, do you do, especially for the hydrogen part? I mean, I completely understand that wind, solar, you may not manufacture these, but rather be the installer, or maybe you do manufacture a part of it. But when it comes to the hydrogen, that's actually a very, if you compare it to these other two, to wind and solar, it's a very new tech and also less developed in overall, right? At least that is from an outsider's perspective. So what kind of efforts do you do in the R&D?
Yeah, I think you're right, but hydrogen production is both new and very old, because we've had electrolyzers around for
that is true.
Nearly 100 years. So, but it's more the application of the electrolyzers in a modern energy system that is new, and there is a lot of development within the electrolyzer business at the moment. And the first thing that we did was that we teamed up with the biggest player in Norway, Nel. Hydrogen, which is a listed company in Norway, and so we had a partnership agreement with Nel, where we tried to develop the best projects, where we took the role as a build and own player, and Nel as the technology supplier. So we worked together in several projects, both up in north of Norway, and we had the intention to do that also internationally. So. But along with Nel, a few other Norwegian companies have now been also growing up and developing electrolyzer technology. So for now we work with all the companies, and our role will be to be a sort of a critical customer that sets the demands on what we need in the project, and then we can work together with the electrolyzer companies to develop the best projects, and that could be Norwegian suppliers, but it could also be international suppliers. And we'll probably touch upon India later on, and we believe that there is a huge need for new electrolyzer technologies. So we will use the ones that are the best and the cheapest for each application.
Right, and we're actually going to talk about these, not only India, but essentially these sort of places in which you can impact the most, right? We're going to touch those in a little bit, though, because right now I'm very actually curious. Now, you already mentioned that you partnered up with Nel, which they are, they manufacture pretty much the whole electrolysis, technology that you need, right? But then you already mentioned that you try to keep the demand based on the projects that you have. So in this project side, when or what does Greenstat look for when saying, okay, here we're gonna need to invest, this, and that technology for achieving, the zero based on their needs, etc. How do you determine what type or what amount? I'm not sure how to put it because I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah.
For hydrogen, for solar power, for wind, how do you determine the whole project?
Yeah, a typical setup would be that we have to find an industrial area where we can actually set up
All
the
right.
kind of equipment. Because obviously, when you working with hydrogen, you need safety zones and you need
Yes.
and you need your surroundings to be aware that you're going to produce hydrogen. So
Right.
typically, you'll find a spot in an industrial area. And then you need somewhere where you either have a strong grid where you can buy electricity from the grid,
Mm-hmm.
like we mainly do in Norway, because we tend to find a strong grid all over all over Norway.
Mm-hmm.
So there is the grid connection that is the important thing. If we work internationally, you will often look at off-grid solutions where you
Yeah.
need to also install the electricity or the power production nearby. But for now, it's mainly grid based. So a good and strong grid connection is important, and then you're down to, and when you're looking at what kind of equipment you will have, then it depends on your production profile, and that depends again on the offtake. So let's say that you work close to an industrial player where you have a 24/7
Mm-hmm.
supply of hydrogen, and you can have a steady production and you can have a steady flow
Right.
through a pipe. But if you need sort of a storage system where you use for a maritime application where you bunker a ship maybe once or twice a week,
Mm-hmm.
then you need a different kind of structure. So and different types of electrolyzers, some of them are better off when you have a steady production. But if you look at getting into the details, if you have a PEM electrolyzer, that
Mm-hmm.
could be sort of shut off and turned down to a
Right.
lower rate at a fairly quick interval, then that would be better suited. So,
Oh,
but
I
then
see.
the overall, what we determine the project is sort of a levelized cost of hydrogen, LCOH. That is the key sort of index on what kind of solution
Mm.
that we will prefer.
Right. But now this seems very. I mean, of course, you have to calculate other variables, other parameters when deciding it. What type of team do you need to assemble to assess exactly the needs for, let's say, the specific industrial plant you're gonna use? What type of team conforms it?
Yeah, typically, and that's the knowledge that we typically have within Greenstat, is to
Mm.
be sort of a good purchaser and to order the best setup. So that would be engineers in the fields of process industry or
Mm.
electrical or automation engineers, and preferably people who have been developing project. It doesn't necessarily need to be hydrogen project. It could be, many of our people come from the LNG business and natural gas.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, many of the same sort of purchase structures within that segment. So,
Right.
but in the end, you also need the hydrogen experts, because hydrogen is sort of a small atom,
It's
yeah,
not.
you
It
need to
doesn't
know what you.
interact like the other, like the rest of the
No, it
periodic
doesn't.
table.
So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean that makes complete sense, and it's actually pretty cool. I'm asking this because naturally there are gonna be some people watching who might be starting their own career, who might want to work in hydrogen. It's already a career you can pursue, right?
yeah,
With this engineering path.
yeah, and we we are totally convinced that hydrogen will play a significant role in the energy system in the future. It will take a bit of time before it takes off. And even though I'm a huge fan of Elon Musk, but he's sort of not been the biggest fan of hydrogen. And I'm driving a Tesla today, so I'm cheering for what he's doing as well. But I think that in the overall energy mix, we will not get there unless we also have hydrogen as a part of it.
Right.
So
Yeah. I mean, definitely the efforts are different, but towards the same goal, right? Which is,
yeah.
a net zero, but once electric, once hydrogen. But this actually leads to a different. Oh, sorry, you were gonna say something.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. And as long as the goal is zero emission, I think that we have to
Right.
be open for all kinds of solution. And the challenge is so big that we can't rule out any solution now. So for me, it's like if we were going to a war, you can't just have the one weapon with you. You need the whole arsenal. And
Right.
now, yeah, it's like this when you go to fight the climate battle as well. You need to have both battery, hydrogen, biofuel, geothermal. You need it
Yes.
all. And then we just have to figure out the mix along the way, what makes the most economical sense in each region.
Right. I mean, that is totally true, especially when considering that you are in sort of the a Nordic space, right? Norway. There's not a lot of sun there. So, for
No,
example, solar power seems to, from an outsider, again, I'm not in Norway to know this, right? But from an outsider's perspective, it seems to me that solar power, you're going to need more panels to achieve the same efficiency that, for example, say in the United States, right? Which the radiation levels and the duration of the sun is larger. So how do you compensate for this? How do you take it into account in the solar project specifically?
yeah, and it's true. So obviously, in Norway, hydropower is the main sort of
Mm.
power production source. But solar power has become increasingly interesting, and especially in the southern parts of Norway. And like you mentioned, out of the 8,600-ish hours each year, we have roughly 1,000 production hours
Hmm.
within solar energy. So it's never going to be sort of the backbone of the energy system.
Right.
But if you combine it with, but you need a lot of cooling for industrial buildings, and so
Hmm.
if you match it with the right sort of consumption, it still makes sense.
All right.
And also if you store it either in batteries or you can convert it into hydrogen, then you can have more seasonal storage. So it's starting to get interesting even in Norway, but it's a lot more interesting in other regions of the world. That's
Right. Right.
for
It's not a priority for what I
no.
understand, which makes complete sense, and it also makes sense. Then why would you go for hydrogen? But now, as for the whole process itself with hydrogen, and I'm taking this sort of borrowed from the whole electrical and solar power world, right? Achieving net zero sometimes is very difficult because although the production of energy might actually be green, for example, producing this hydrogen, etc., producing the machines for it sometimes is not. As an
Yep.
example, for solar panels, the solar panels are great, they generate electricity and they last a very long time. But producing them, especially the silicon part, when you build the semiconductors, and batteries is the same thing. It, Mining and harvesting that silicon and then transforming it into these useful, it tends to be very, very impactful to the environment. It tends to take a big toll. Is this the same for the hydrogen, the sort of the hydrogen solution when it comes to the technology used for it? Does it have the same mark in the environment as, for example, solar or batteries?
All any equipment that you will have to produce will have emissions attached
Hmm.
to them. So I think they will never, and that's obviously one of the dilemmas that we are facing. That you will never have anything that is truly zero
Yeah.
emission because we should go back to nature and do. So I think that we have to sort of have a framework that we're working within, and that's that we are looking for a society that is
Hmm.
basically the way that we have it today. We have cars, we have airplanes, we have buildings, and that means that we need also quite a bit of energy. And
Hmm.
then it would be a comparison between between the areas. And so when it comes to hydrogen, you have some positive sides, like you don't need as many rare minerals as
Hmm.
you do for the battery industry. So so that's positive. But on the other hand, you spend more energy sort of converting from renewable energy
Right.
to hydrogen and then back again. So so it will depend on, if you have a surplus of energy, it makes sense to produce hydrogen, and then it will still be efficient. And
Right.
but again, back to, if you have the sort of a war scenario, and you have, if you only focus on one solution, you will have supply chain issues like you see now. You have
Yes.
so 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 to have sort of a parallel value chains that can
Mm.
solve the same uh, problem, the zero emission problem, then you can choose. And if the hydrogen value chains never delivers on sort of the whole value chain solution when it comes to emissions and price wise, then it would lose out in the end. But for now,
Hmm.
I think that all these value chains have the potential to be sort of uh, good solutions in different regions of the world,
Right.
because it depends on what kind of energy production resources you have, what kind of minerals you have. So anything that you can do locally will be positive for any specific value chain.
Hmm.
And this is mostly, if you look at bio waste. Obviously, if you have a lot of bio waste available, you will go for biofuel as
Right,
one
right,
of the
right. It
basic
would make the
solutions.
most sense. And I totally understand that the point of net zero is to balance out, right? The processes that you just cannot get out of, that sort of are contaminating maybe, and then balance it out, right? That's sort of the net part of these net zero,
Yeah.
which, right, it makes total sense. But now I'm very curious. You already mentioned a few answers ago that if, for example, you're looking at India, for example, and you're looking at these places where this balancing out sort of seems very right now very one-sided, right? For example, it's very contaminating. So first of all, before we jump into the actual efforts you're going to do in India, when did you start looking into these very highly, not just polluted, but very highly energy consuming places, because there's a lot of people or because there's a lot of manufacturing or industry wise? When did you start looking at those areas as a big opportunity for hydrogen to really make a big change in a shorter term than, for example, in Norway?
Yeah, I think that when we founded Greenstat, the idea is that we would make a change on a global scale,
That's
and
nice.
then, but we still also figured out that Norway is a good place to start, because we're a small nation where we uh, have a lot of money from the oil and gas industry, so we
Right,
have
that's true.
money to invest in the green sector, and we also have a population that have quite a lot of money to spend. So, and we can be a test bed for both projects and solutions
Hmm.
that can later be utilized in larger nations that need it a lot more than Norway does. But also it's important to showcase. We can't just go around and clean up the world and still be the most polluting nation in the world. So we need to clean up Norway first, and that's
Hmm.
an important task. So, but if you look at the EV revolution in Norway, we went from maybe 0% EV sales 15 years ago, and now we are at 90% new cars sold
Wow.
are EVs, and that's just due to sort of the adoption rate, and also that we
Hmm.
got some political incentives that made that happen. And so and that was of great help, again back to Elon Musk and Tesla, that they had a whole nation that sort of could prove that
Right, right, that is true.
it worked. And now we're trying to do the same within the maritime industry. So we had a first electric ferry up and running, I think it was around 5 years ago, and now we have 70
Wow.
ferries on batteries. And last
Just
year we had the
wow.
first hydrogen ferry up and running on a commercial ferry route, and now the next one will
Mm.
come next year. And so we're a nation that can showcase solutions that other nations maybe can't afford to
Mhm.
sort of pilot. and then we can take that knowledge and and assist nations like India or others. And for Greenstat, it makes sense that we target nations where our knowledge is sort of welcomed and needed.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go to the Western Europe, like Germany, they will manage on their own. We don't need they don't need as much help from or assistance from Norway. But if
Right.
we India, Sri Lanka, and eventually if we go to Africa or other nations, and that's where we can make a really big impact. So
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree that you can make a really big impact. It also makes sense why you would go to Norway and essentially maybe Germany and these places for these trials, right? Because it's like an old boss of mine said. Well, not old boss of mine, but previous, that the pain of same is bigger than the pain of change, right? So naturally, you have that threshold, which is great. But for example, places like India, they cannot afford to make such a radical change because it would completely disrupt maybe their financial ecosystem. But now this does lead me to the question of what the efforts you're doing in India themselves, right? Like you already mentioned, you're already looking at India, you're already working on how you're going to enter that market if you're not already in it. So my question here is, what exactly is the plan of assisting, in India? How do you have to adapt to the current sort of landscape, the energy landscape that you have in India right now, and also maybe legal wise, energy wise? How do you have to adapt to it to really make an impact?
yeah, no, this we have just started our learning journey
Mm,
towards India. So because that's not something that we are going to do in 1 or 2 years. It's
right.
going to take decades. So, but we've founded we started our Indian initiative back in it's 2019, so it's only
Mm-hmm.
4 years now. And then we founded a company in 2020. So now we have a Greenstat Hydrogen India set up in
Mm-hmm.
with an office in Mumbai, and we have a good team working there. So,
That's
so
cool.
what we are doing now, firstly, is to get the right contacts and to get
Mm-hmm.
partnerships so that we can. And in the first way will always be like a land grabbing phase. You need to find the best areas to work with and to develop some good projects. But what we see in India is that they have a large industry where they have a high usage of gray hydrogen today. That is hydrogen
Great.
produced natural gas. So you have
Okay.
natural gas, and then you could convert it through a steam forming process, and
Okay.
then but then you have a lot of CO2 emissions. So
Right.
so the government has set a really strict requirement that they need to replace a lot of the gray hydrogen with green hydrogen
Mm.
that will be produced from renewable energy. So our goal is to find partners and also to be and we also have some local contacts that work very well with the government
Mm-hmm.
and the local stakeholders. So that we need to convince the local stakeholders that hydrogen could be a safe and good solution for their zero emission solution. But the biggest challenge that we have at the moment is to sort of get offtake agreements and
Right.
to get financing for the first pilot projects, and we're hoping to get
Mm.
that going for the next years. But when but we are impressed by the government, and that's all the way up to Prime Minister Modi, and
Nice.
he's been so clear in his vision that they're going for uh, zero emission society, and that green hydrogen is placed at the heart of that
That's very
uh,
cool.
so transition. So
Right.
it's really cool.
That's pretty amazing. And now they sort of sorry, there's let fed up a question that it just sort of clicked to me. I'm very curious. How different is it to sort of build a company and build the relationships and partnerships for a company, sort of like the first time versus the second time? Like, for example, when you found a Greenstat for the first time in 2015, you mentioned.
Yeah.
Before that, did you already have some sort of an entrepreneurship path? And if not, I mean, Greenstat was sort of your first try. How different is it now the second time, but in a completely different place? I mean, I'm assuming you already know what to expect when it comes to challenges and everything. I'm just very curious in this sort of entrepreneurship
Yeah,
side.
yeah. Greenstat is the first company that I've sort of founded as a founder, but
Hmm.
I've been sort of joining company that has been on a founding journey. So,
Hmm.
so I've been part of kind of a similar structure, and that was 7, 8 years before we founded Greenstat. But we
Hmm.
also set up a main company, and then we had 19 subsidiaries and developing within different areas.
Wow.
So that was an industrial focus where we both had oil and gas and renewables, and
Right.
so that was great learning for me. And I've also had my own consultancy company where I've always been working with new ideas and thoughts. But it was not a goal for me to found or establish a company on my own. It
Hmm.
was more to work within the green energy sector. But then, when you're frustrated enough and you can't find the company that you want to work for, then
You
it
make
ended
it.
up being the easiest solution that's to create the company that I had in my vision. And so far that's been an interesting and yeah, very good journey. And I'm hoping that, and we always had this long-term vision. So our strategy has been from 2015 to 2030. So now we're just out past the halfway mark,
Right.
and the biggest growth will hopefully come now in the years towards 2030.
So we're about to see the spike, pretty much.
That's what we're hoping for.
That's and that's very very cool, and I'm very happy to know that. Now, once you, I have a question in this: is India planned to be sort of a trial version, if you will, of a whole company, created specifically for that market for India? And if it works, you're gonna expand to different places of the world, as you already mentioned, Africa, Sri Lanka, etc. Or is India this exclusive place that you want to go there just because of how big of an opportunity there is for hydrogen, for green hydrogen?
Yes, I'll probably give you two answers to this, because it's one, whether we see that how it evolves over
Hmm.
time, and we have to sort of adapt to the way that business
Right.
evolves. And then I have my vision that what I would love to happen. So at the moment we have just chosen a few countries
Hmm.
globally, and that India, Bosnia, and a few other companies in Europe, and also
Okay.
Sri Lanka. But that we will sort of pilot a way of approaching those kinds of countries, and then we will see how the Greenstat structure will grow within that uh,
Mm.
these different countries. And now we see that it's starting to form like a similar structure that we have in Norway, that you
Hmm.
have a top company and then you have uh, different areas
Right.
developing in these countries. Because back to the point that we had earlier, that if you go to different regions, what works in Norway doesn't necessarily work in other regions.
Right.
So if we have hydrogen, wind, and solar in Norway, it could be eventually hydrogen, biofuel, geothermal energy, or whatever in India.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at the moment we are just letting it play out a little bit, but with that zero emission vision and
Hmm.
a technology and an energy neutral approach, using the best of our knowledge and attaching that to the money. So, but green hydrogen has been sort of the building block
Right.
in the different nations. But if I can touch upon my vision as well, the dream will be to have a Greenstat in every nation in the world, so that you can have a Greenstat, uh, sort of US Greenstat, Nigeria, and then that should be owned by the people of that nation.
Right.
Purely. So, because we also see that in addition to have this energy transition, we also need to have a sort of a capital transition, so that we can
Hmm.
transfer the capital from centralized ownership purely to also be owned by the people.
Mm.
So if you can have the people of any nation owning in their own energy company, and then looking at how to create the best kind of revenues for that company. So that way we also early in Norway invited the people of Norway to become shareholders in Greenstat, and at the moment we're a bit more than 2,000 shareholders. We would like to be a lot more,
Right.
but if we can have that in place as well. So that's more like a Greenstat model that we are also
Uh-huh.
at more at sort of capital raised and then investment level rather than just on a technology and an energy level.
Wow, there are so many topics that just verge from that single answer. Thank you. It's so cool. I want to focus on one right now, all right, which is, so you already mentioned that the effort or the vision is to have a green study in every country of the world. That would be like the dream, right? Which I
Yep.
love. I love that vision. But focusing on India, for example, I would just assume, I can only assume that there is a big gap when it comes to education in renewable energy in India, for example, versus in Norway. In Norway, naturally, as you already mentioned, the government and there's a lot of incentives, there's a lot of education around why green energy is so important, green, green hydrogen, solar, etc. Right? So when you arrive first to India, where this level of education is simply not there, and I mean education in the sense of green energy and why is it important and why do you have to strive towards it. What kind of education efforts do you believe Greenstat is going to end up just having to do for it to really work out?
Yeah, no, that's a huge question as well. But again, India is a country with a lot of diversity. So both ways. So what
Yeah.
uh, coming from a small nation like Norway, we're always humble that even if we have skillful people in Norway, we have 10 times as skillful people in India. So we're extremely impressed about the team that has been set up and the experience and the knowledge that they have. But I think that the one thing that we can bring from Norway is that we have these actual projects that have been developed, and
Mhm.
we have fairly strict rules and regulations, and when it comes to doing things that requires high safety standards, and like you see in hydrogen and other areas of the energy, that's areas where I think that Norway have something that we can contribute, and with our many decades of developing safe oil and gas installations and projects, we sort of have a reputation that we can do these kinds of
Mhm.
projects, and that's beneficial for our partners in India, because if they can work with Norwegian partners, that increases the chances of succeeding and to getting the finance for the project. So I think the partnerships between what we have in Norway, but with the local expertise, and I think that they're extremely quick at picking up any sort of kind of knowledge within the
Mhm.
expertise within
That's
electrolyzers
cool.
or hydrogen, and so that will not be a problem. But it's more these sort of practical experiences that we have
Uh-huh.
gained with time. Uh, and and also there are some cultural differences where
Right.
some of our Nordic sort of cultural ways of working are good in some ways, and then combined uh, with sort of the ways that you can have sort of, but we have very high price on the hourly rates. So to develop projects in Norway can
Right.
be expensive, but we can do the same for a lot cheaper, but with the same quality over time in India. So this mix is really good.
Right. And I mean, I have to say, just I mean, I understand you're still on sort of that development process in India, but it seems just such a natural evolution from Norway to India, right? Because as you said, in Norway, it's sort of very controlled space. I see it sort of like these perfectly made lab, right, where you can run all of the tests you need and see the results, and then you go sort of to this rough environment after the lab, which in this case is India. It seems very natural and very impressive, the efforts that you're doing. And first of all, for that, congratulations. Now,
Thank
moving
you.
moving to a different part now, which is also, it also verges from the same answer that you provided just earlier, right? That you gave me just earlier. You were also talking a lot about the investment that you do, right? And now talking about the Greenstat investor side of everything, not anymore as the project owner or developer or the technology sort of installer, but as an investor. I'm very curious, what type of companies do you seek to invest in the first place?
Yes, I can talk a bit about the ones that we did, but unfortunately, I have to
Mm-hmm.
also be a little bit cautious about how
Mm,
optimistic we should be on our own investments, because at the moment we see that our project side is so capital intensive that
I
most of our
totally
focus
understand.
is
Yeah.
actually to raise capital ourselves. So we are less in a position to be an investor,
Right.
but even but we have done some investments, and I can talk a little bit about them. And if we get in position, again, I would love for us to be able to
Totally
do a lot of
understand.
investments in the future as well, because we sit in a position where we attract extremely interesting companies that approach us and are seeking investors. But in Norway, we have invested in some companies within the maritime industry, like
Mm.
Evoy, which is a company developing uh, electric drivetrains for boats up to a certain standard, and they were leading in their class. And they're also looking at how to use fuel cells for their drivetrains. So that's a good
Mm.
combination for us. If they succeed, they will open up a good market for us.
Wow.
And so we've invested in a company in UK called River Simple, who develops a hydrogen car. They have been working over a few years now, and obviously, if they succeed, that will create a lot of consumption for hydrogen. And we have a company within the renewable energy production in tidal power
Mm-hmm.
called Tide Tech, that has got a reversible tidal turbine that could
Wow.
open up new ways of producing energy
Mm-hmm.
in sort of good tidal conditions. So, and they also looking into how to produce hydrogen from their tidal power plants.
Right.
That's some examples of what we do. And if we
And
had unlimited capital, there are many of other companies as well, both within solar technology and uh, um, and we missed out on some big chances because we didn't have the available company. But that's how life is.
that's how business is. But hey, thank you very much for sharing that. It's actually, I already heard before of River Simple, because I've been in touch with, for example, of a different sort of a hyper car with hydrogen called
Yep.
Hyperion, right?
Yeah, I know that's cool.
And yeah, and the minute I learned about Hyperion, I also started, sort of learning about others. And it's cool to know that you are involved with River Simple. It's pretty amazing. But
Yeah, we
hey,
had a dialogue with them almost all the way back since 2015. So
that's cool.
um, I really hope that they succeed and get lots of cars out in the market.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. But yeah, it's also cool to know that you are smart investors in that way, right? Because in the end, Greenstat doesn't end up being your main investment if you think about it that way, right? So it's cool to know that although when you have the opportunity, you do these investments and you sort of do the efforts of bringing tech forward with you. But
Yep.
it's a smart way to do it. Thank you very much for that. Now, I want to ask a totally different part over here, right? Which is actually going all the way back to the very first answers you gave, in which is that you started off with hydrogen and then you sort of brought in, solar and wind. Eventually, you sort of embraced EV infrastructure, for example, EV stations, charging stations.
Yep.
So the fact that you constantly embrace new tech that is, with the time turning sort of popular or common, or there's a big need for it, for example, the EV charging stations, the infrastructure. What type of tech do you currently see out there that you might not be ready to embrace yet, but you see like, this could be the next step for Greenstat? Do you have an eye out for anything?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and I can do one example while I think about others. Okay, at the moment there is a lot of discussion now about nuclear power, and then you have
Hmm.
small modular reactors that you can set up as sort of net zero power
Hmm.
plants along Norway. Obviously, it's not. It's also an issue with that, but when you look at the hydrogen production side, that's extremely interesting. If we could have stable zero emission power that could replace coal or natural gas. I think that that's an area that will come. If Norway is going to be take a position in that area or not, that's that yet to be seen. But there is a new player that has just been founded there in Norway that will
Nice.
develop that area. So um, and yes, and mainly and if you look at the consumer side, I think that one of the areas that we find extremely interesting is aviation. And when it comes to
Oh,
hydrogen, we had a good dialogue with Zero Avia. I don't know if you know
really?
about the company. And that's one of the investments that we missed out on. We should have participated a few years ago, but they're now backed by a large company. I think also Breakthrough Energy, that is Bill Gates' company, are backing them. So, but the day that you can sort of make hydrogen commercially available fuel for the aviation sector, then you open up a whole new market, and you can also transform one of the biggest, because obviously flying is
Wow.
a way to connect people and to share knowledge. So I strongly believe that we need a world where we can travel,
Hmm.
and so I really hope that we sort of break the code of zero emission flying. So if I should mention one area, that would be probably it. And
Right.
I would like, and also I would love to have flying drones for people carriage. That there are a lot of interesting concepts
Hmm.
coming up, but you haven't got any that is really commercial yet. But
Right.
that would be.
That is true. Yeah, yeah. I mean, actually, wow. When you mentioned Zero Avia, that's actually pretty cool. We had them on Builder Nation.
Oh, okay,
Way
yeah,
back when. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I believe actually they were the very first episode of Builder Nation. We spoke
yeah.
with a design engineer from Zero Avia, which is pretty cool. But now, coming back into this, actually, this very last thing that you mentioned, right, which is about drones, for example, we've lately been discussing and chatting a lot with you know, with drone manufacturers, or not necessarily the drone itself, but sort of these landing ports and everything,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool to know that you're on track with those efforts and you would like to go there. It is true they're not commercially yet, sort of like for end consumer deliveries, but it's cool to know they're working. And I'm very curious to know though, as for the aviation side, you already mentioned that it would be sort of like the next big thing, right? But the thing about planes is that they consume a lot of energy. I mean, they need a lot of power to fly, right? That is, for example, the reason why, if I'm not mistaken, again, this could be I could be wrong. That is why right now there are no electric planes, at least not large planes, for that matter, because it's just not enough output of energy, right? Is hydrogen capable of reaching that energy needed for a plane to actually fly? Maybe not today, but does it have that potential?
And the answer is yes. If you, but you have to convert it into either liquid state, or you have to
Oh,
uh, have some kind of other energy carrier. So the first hydrogen ferry in Norway is now based on liquid hydrogen. So you can
wow.
and that's possible, and you can also have different ways of sort of binding up the hydrogen. But so looking at the pure compressed hydrogen solution for planes, then you will not reach the same sort of range as you will do with the planes that we know
Hmm.
today using traditional jet fuel. So you will need something else. But but liquid hydrogen is one potential route. But now there are huge initiatives looking at that. So, but in theory, yes.
Wow, I did not know that. That's actually pretty cool. All right. Well, for now, I believe that we're already approaching the end of this interview, right? So I just have a couple last questions before we close this out. And number one is, I mean, you've already given us a really cool vision of where you want Greenstat to go and what you're doing together, right? Which is having an impact all around the world. You're already starting over the efforts in India, and you're looking at different places. But my question to you is, past 2030, which you already mentioned is sort of your mark, right? Past 2030, where do you envision Greenstat going towards, especially in these sort of global expansion, if you will, right? How do you envision Greenstat having a big impact around the world? Maybe not in every single country within the next following 15 years, maybe, but where do you see it scaling up?
Yeah, and I really hope that we can make a huge impact in India where we have started. But I think that what we are trying to do is to build an engine. And when you first get that engine up and running and you show that that model works, I hope that other countries will like to replicate and just, okay, we will just do what they did, and then
Right.
and sort of apply the Greenstat model in the nation, and
Yeah.
then they have a setup, and then we roll it out, and then you get hydrogen, solar, wind, whatever projects rolling in the nation. So, and our vision is also to be because we have this slogan or vision, making green happen. So our goal is, we're not going to sit around and wait for things to happen. We are going to make sure that they happen, and we're also going to build the new projects that are needed to get the next level of energy. So we rarely invest in already existing projects. We always try to build new projects, because the existing project, that's sort of, the problem is solved. Then
you just need to make sure it keeps going.
Yeah, so we have to make the new project. So
right.
So if we can be a player that can accelerate the introduction of new projects in new nations, and that's a complex structure, because it's not just about the tech. It's about the stakeholder management. It's about the capital. It's about the people that are going to do the job. So you need to make sure. And I think that, in a way, if you can have a sort of a Greenstat stamp on a project, then the local stakeholders will know that, okay, this project is performed in the best possible manner, where you have both. Then you have looked at the need for energy, but you have looked at the local sort of impact that it does. You don't use any area that you don't need. You try to have the conflict at as low a level as possible. So it's going to be, because as long as we acknowledge that we need new energy, we need new projects, but we can't just force them onto the people. We have to make it sort of a smooth introduction and make them positively, the attitude positive to the project. Because we've made some failures here in Norway already. You've probably heard about all the opposition now against onshore wind power, and it's almost impossible to build onshore wind power, because we've done some huge mistakes when it comes to developing, and that's not Greenstat. It's more
it's the Norway.
So that the processes were not good enough. The projects were too big. The turbines were too big. So if that had been done better, we could have built a lot more wind. So hopefully we can learn a lot from that and do that more rapidly in other nations.
Right. Yeah, but I mean, it's cool. It's cool that you sort of learn from your mistakes, but it's also cool to know that the where you try to go. Like the Greenstat stamp on the project seems amazing. Now, sort of a follow-up question with this. I know I was supposed to be done with that question, but hey, how do you believe or how do you envision this impacting the everyday life of a person that might not be necessarily super invested or super related to a large industry, say company, or that maybe they are the owners or something? How is this going to affect the everyday life?
I think when you've been to India a few times, you see how it's going to change people. Because obviously, when you walk around the street and you feel the smog in your eyes, and when you breathe, uh, this is if we manage to replace all the fossil fuels
Hmm.
with and all the cars and everything, it's like when we introduced the smoke ban in Norway. When you went into a restaurant before, it was just smoke everywhere, and you just
Yeah,
felt it. The day that you banned that, it, and you can never go back. And I think it's a bit the same way with the green energy, that people are so used to the world that it is today, that they don't really know what they're going to get. So
right,
so
right.
so
So they don't
but
strive towards it.
yeah, no, and if you look at nations like India, or if you go to the nations where you have other priorities that are a lot higher on the list, that's why you need maybe international capital, you need
Mm.
other solutions to get that first steps going, and then we have to make an economy that works within that new green energy field. But the
It's slow,
benefits
yeah.
will be obvious, where you have in big cities, you will have clear skies that you haven't had for many years. And for me, it's like, yeah, just you have children growing up in sort of a clear air, where compared to what they have today. So that's what motivates me. And I think that even though we're lucky in Norway that most of the country is covered or fairly clean
Yeah.
still, but that's why we can hopefully make an impact on the rest of the world.
It's a very nice sort of end goal, right? It's giving me huge the Lorax movie vibes, but it's amazing. It's really cool that that is sort of the main idea. But now I wanna jump to the very last question that I have for you for this live, right? Which, I mean, we've discussed a lot about technology and a lot about why we need this technology, right? But now, when it comes to the business side, we didn't really discuss a lot of how to get there. So that's my question. What advice do you have for any person out there who might be, starting their own path in this whole green future sort of path, right? That maybe they want to do their own. They want to put their effort into it. They want to leave their mark, just as Greenstat is doing. What advice do you have for this young engineer or entrepreneur or investor who want to leave their mark? How do they start?
Yeah, I think that you have to find an area that you really are interested about, and just get really good at it. And then if you're really good at whatever it is, if it's hydrogen, solar, wind, because we're going to need everything, and then you become a champion for that area. And but with a balanced mind, that we all,
Hmm.
because the word one of the things that I maybe don't like too much is when you have people that have found solar power or found and then they just, that's the solution for
Right, that they
everything.
say it's the
So,
best.
yeah, so it's the best, and that's the only thing that you need. So you need to have an open mind, but you have to be, if you're extremely good at one area, and then still with an open mind, and then you just have to see what kind of area you're interested in, if it's in the capital raising side, or if you're
Mm.
economy, so if the technical side, dig into the technical side, because there is going to be a huge need for all kinds of areas, but not at the same time. So if you want to catch the hot wave maybe next summer, you have
Hmm.
to read but like we did with hydrogen, when we started with hydrogen in 2015, we were the first green hydrogen company in Norway,
That's
and
cool.
we sort of have to we had to convince everyone that this was actually something that was going to go. But now we have maybe 20 typical green hydrogen companies in Norway.
Nice.
So that shows that. So you have to also be able to be ridiculed and laughed at, and for people to say that this is crazy and will never work, and but you have to convince yourself that this is what you're believing in, and then but it's not which area. I don't think that's the most important.
Yeah.
Find something that's of your interest.
That is very nice, and I believe the perfect way to give a closure to this interview. Thank you very much for it was a very amazing answer, I have to say. It was a very cool answer. Find what you love, make sure you believe in it, and start a trend like Greenstat. You started a trend with green hydrogen. That's amazing. Thank you very much for all of these.
Yes. I'll just, since I had this picture hanging on my wall, because this is my vision.
Nice.
And, so this is our society with all the green solutions inside of it. So it's just for me to every day remind myself that we have the solutions. It's just to work for them and get them implemented in the society. So sorry for that interruption.
Thank you for interrupting with such an amazing idea. It's actually pretty cool. I didn't even notice that it sort of included, like, your background included everything. I've been so focused on what you're saying that I didn't really take a look at it, but it's amazing. Thank you very much for that. All right, Vegard, I believe that is, again, the perfect way to give a closure to this. It also leaves me personally with a very nice feeling of saying, hey, we're doing something good towards this greener future, and that's very nice. So thank you very much for coming here, for sharing your thoughts, sharing your efforts, and sharing your vision. I believe your vision is the key to why Greenstat is doing such great work. So where can we find you and Greenstat? Where can we keep track of your efforts? What are your social media handles?
Yeah, if you our website is greenstat.com, and if you go there, you will find the links to all our LinkedIn and Facebook profiles as well. We're not that good at or Instagram is not that active at these days. So LinkedIn and Facebook will be where you can follow our projects.
Right. LinkedIn in particular, I do have to say, it's pretty cool. You share some really cool insights there and updates and news. It's pretty cool. So thank you very much for sharing that. Also, for everybody out there, remember, you can find a lot more information, interesting articles, interviews, clips, blogs, news, a lot of more content directly on our website, buildernation.io, and as Builder Nation across all social media. We're going to love to hear from you. Thank you very much for being part of this community. Vegard, thank you for joining us in this journey. We appreciate it a lot, and we're going to see you in the next episode.
Thank you for having me. It was I really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you.
Me too. Thank you very much.
When building the future is your priority, tedious procurement processes should be last on your list. The problem is that purchasing data is scattered across spreadsheets, receipts, emails, and messages. Tracking it all sucks and makes it easy to commit mistakes. Introducing the Control Hub Way, the all-in-one purchasing software for hardware companies. Buying parts, services, or office supplies? Submit a quick purchase request to buy from your list of approved vendors, or buy from a new provider. Buying from approved vendors is even easier. Import your shopping cart directly into your purchase request using our checkout integrations. When the order is ready, submit it for approval. We'll ping all pre-designated approvers both via Control Hub's website, email, and Slack notifications for a faster turnaround. If you need a PO, we got you. Generate it in one click. Online purchase? Boom, virtual card. Do an automatic 3-way match, pay invoices, and sync everything live with QuickBooks or NetSuite. Purchasing just got a lot easier. Control Hub. Get back to building.